All right. Hello, everybody. I hope everybody's doing well. I'm Tony Pellegrino, and thanks for joining us for another episode of Tech Talk. This is something we do on Facebook every Tuesday and Thursday at 4 Pacific time. Today, I've got Andrew Harris from our sales department here to join me, and we're going to talk about all kinds of good stuff today. Today, I've got Beadlock wheels, SwitchPros and their capabilities, and batteries, if we even get to that. I'm not sure how far we're going to make it. Depends on the questions. I hope everybody is queued up and ready to type. Of course, we always welcome your questions and comments. Make sure you include something about your vehicle or describe what you're trying to do so we can better help answer your question. I don't think we have anything featured today, so we're going to skip this. I had something, but I don't even know what I did with it. We're going to run out of time anyways. Let's start with bead locks. All right, Alex, so we're going to pan over here. So what my plan was to talk a little bit about safety on these and a couple of the mistakes that a lot of people make. First off, if you are going to work on your beadlock wheel, I want you to get one of these tools and I want you to take the valve stem out, okay? So you got to remember, these bolts are holding 25 PSI of air pressure, and for some reason, if you forget and want to, start taking these bolts off, this thing will literally blow off in your face. So you need to pull the valve stem, and you just put this in there and twist it around and unscrew it. It'll let all the air out, and then you can safely either tighten or loosen your beadlock ring bolts. So the ring being this part, right? So they come in different shapes, sizes, colors. You can see mine get used pretty well. The next thing I want to talk about is the bolts. So they come with a regular, hex head, grade 8 bolt. And I always upgrade to, let's see if I can find a better looking one. Here we go. A nice ARP 12-point bolt. And what this does is when you scrape them, it doesn't knock off everything that you have to bite with a socket. So because of the 12 point and the way that it fits on the socket, it's just a much better bite and the whole socket goes over it. So one of the things that I wanted to describe to you guys, and this is really important, is I want you to use grease. When you thread these bolts into the ring, you can get a false sense of it being tight because the threads are binding. We were just talking about this. Some of the different brands of wheels out there, the thread quality is not very good. So you go to thread it in and all of a sudden, it's like tight. Well, you need to run a tap through those threads. Just make sure it's all clean. These should thread in and out really nice. And then before you do that, I want you to actually put a little dab of grease on them. By the way, this will not only make it consistent as they're going in, but it's gonna make it easier the day you need to take them out because it'll keep corrosion and water and other things from really attacking these bolts and just locking them into place. So do yourself a favor.
A lot of companies use inserts also instead of tapping
the
actual aluminum. They'll put is it a steel insert? I'm assuming?
Yeah. Sometimes it's a PEM nut or a helicoil, that kind of a insert for sure. And it just depends on the brand of wheel you get and whether it has that. In this case, the wheels I'm running actually upsize the bolt too, so it's not just a 5/16, it's a 3/8 bolt, so it's even bigger. So that just comes with more of the race style stuff. They just keep up in the heavy duty factor. Okay, now once, sure.
Trenton Delano, will 35s fit on my stock JK?
Yes, they will. Yep.
With our fenders.
Yeah.
Let's not forget that.
Yeah. Yeah.
Caveat. Let's see.
The question was, will 35s fit on a stock JK? And the answer was yes with our fenders. I think the last one I did had the 1.75" puck lift and the fenders, and it looked great.
Right, and that was just on a sport. I
Yeah.
think with a Rubicon, the little bit taller springs, it'd probably just go on without any
out.
sort of
Yeah.
spacer.
Yeah, and that, by the way, you can see that Jeep over, it's a red 4-door JK in our gallery section, so check that out.
Jimmy Martfart, grease, not anti-seize, question mark.
You can use anti-seize. I avoid that stuff like the plague because it gets everywhere. Whatever I'm wearing is ruined. So if I have to use that stuff, I use a brush. You know, I'm like super careful with it. Anti-seize is great. A lot of people don't have that, and I didn't necessarily want to send them to the store to buy that. Everybody's got grease. What I would caution you against is don't use a white lithium grease. You want more of a moly base or a synthetic grease like we're using here. Yep.
Danny Patry, are they fine thread metric or standard grade 8 or 12.9?
So these, at least on all the wheels I've seen, whether it's Raceline or KMC or any of the different brands, even Trail Ready, those have all been 5/16 18. So that's a coarse thread, American, normal, super easy to find. These are a 3/8 16. So again, American. So at least the Chinese haven't worked their way into the Beadlock wheels. I mean, they're probably all made over there, but you know. So.
Corey Lone Wolf Picard, I know you run 1350 U-joints, but I don't remember what kind you said they were, solid or serviceable.
No, on those I do not run the serviceable ones. I want the cross solid. So, and I believe that JE Reel uses the Niapco brand U-joints. So the 1350s, yep, unserviceable.
Ed Gladden Jr., how much air in wheel before you put the beadlock rim on, then install your ARP bolts? Question mark.
So yeah, let's talk about that process. Oh, washer, okay. So
Somebody wants to know if those bolts are on the website.
they are not, but in a previous post, because those are special ARP bolts, they're not cheap. You know, by no means are they cheap.
Is that a higher grade than grade 8? Or?
It is a higher grade,
Okay.
yeah.
Okay.
Like the guy at ARP told me, like grade 8 isn't even like their minimum requirement. Like they're just way above that. So,
Nice.
Okay. So when you've got your beadlock wheel, what we usually do is we set it on a bucket, okay, like a 5-gallon bucket. Then we throw the tire on it and get it down so it's over the top, and then you have the top of the tire sits on here, then you put your ring on, okay? So you do not put any air in this thing until you are done with everything torqued. By the way, if this is your first beadlock wheel you're doing, make sure you don't forget to put the valve stem in. You will be very sad if you do that because you're gonna take it all apart. And by the way, this is, how long would you say? Is this like at least a half an hour deal per tire, if not an hour? Right?
Yeah, depending on the tire manufacturer, some of the things we were talking about,
Yeah.
how tight that edge of the bead is to the bead lock, it could be a 30 to 45 minute job per
Yeah,
tire.
I just kind of figure an hour. Alex, would you roll me over that other tire we have there? Because that's one of the things that I wanted to talk about that you were saying.
Jim Farmer asked, what's the torque or just tight?
No, we're going to get to that because that's an important part.
And
All
each
right.
manufacturer has their own.
Has their own.
Yeah. So it's hypercritical to.
So can you see in here, Alex? So when a tire's manufactured, there's a sharp lip right here. Sometimes there's extra rubber, and it'll be hanging there. Well, that's going to prevent your beadlock ring from this sitting down on there, so it'll clamp. So what we'll do is we'll take a utility knife and we'll trim off that extra rubber. You want to make sure that this inside lip sits down nice right here, or you were going to fight it. It's not going to seal. You're going to have trouble getting the bolts in. The ring is going to be wobbly, like it's going to do a bunch of bad stuff. So you really want to make sure that this back edge of the tire sits down real nice and flush on there. And so feel free to, don't gouge into the tire, but cut off excess rubber. If it looks pretty clean like this one we've mounted this before, What you may have to do is take a dead blow hammer once you've got the tire on there and just tap around and get that to sit down on top of there. Typically what happens is when you go to put the ring on, you got to remember it's going to be sitting up like this. Well, your bolts might not be long enough. So you may need to get yourself 4 or 8 extra bolts that are a little bit longer so that you can start to pull the thing down and then get your regular bolts in. Last thing you want to do is start messing up the threads in your wheel. You'll be really sad because you've just wasted a $450, $500 wheel. So now let's talk about torque. So one of the things that I want you to be cognizant of is that the ring should sit all the way down on the rim. So when you, back to this one that's mounted, when you look inside here, there should be no gap between the ring and the rim, okay? That's really important. If there is a gap, then you may need a spacer because some of the beads on different tires are thicker. And what'll happen is you'll keep tightening the beadlock ring down and it's gonna flex and eventually it'll break the bolts off. So you don't want that issue either. Okay, so all of that said, the average for a 5/16 18 bolt on a beadlock is typically about 18 foot-pounds. So let's talk about how you're gonna do that. So typically what I do is I take something like this that's got an adjustable thing to it, and I start every bolt by hand. Do not start it with this. You need several threads in, I would say 3 turns by hand, and then you can start, and I want all the bolts in. And then you're going to crisscross, right? You're gonna keep bopping back and forth until you get all the way around, and you're just doing a quick blip, 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 okay? I don't want you to just go zzz, bam, you know, you're gonna screw up the whole thing. That when you get back around, the ring is gonna be like pushed to one side. This has gotta be done super evenly, and that's also part of the reason I want you using grease or anti-seize, you know, because you want everything to be able to float a little bit and really work its way in, okay? More questions?
Yeah, Frank, Skitchitano, not sure if I missed it. Will you show tricks to break the bead?
To break the bead. Yeah, that's a whole nother thing. So, you know, on a beadlock wheel, so now we've talked about installing it. Now we want to uninstall it. So obviously you do the reverse, you take the ring off, right? This part will fall off. Okay, without the beadlock ring, this will fall off. It's this one that's seated. And depending on the wheel manufacturer and what tire you have, will depend on how hard that is to get off. So this one has a slight back lip and that tire bites on there hard. So here at the shop, we've got a machine, but when I'm in the desert and I have to break a tire, I just flip this thing over. So you want the outside down, so it's down. Now I just take my jack on my trailer that's hooked up to my truck or my motorhome, and I just push down and I just keep rotating the tire until that pops off. And then you can put on a new tire on the rim, whatever you got to do. We've done this many, many times. Trust me, more times than I care to admit. So, not easy, correct.
Trenton Delano, what is a quality brand of beadlock wheels that comes with 12-point bolts and have thread certs instead of just tapping the aluminum?
Let's see.
Nobody sends 12-point.
No, so that's out the window. That's always an upgrade you've got to do. Is Trail Ready doing an insert?
No, theirs is drilled and tapped. The whole insert thing, I've just heard a lot of mixed reviews of the inserts, of them falling out.
Yeah.
So I would prefer that it's just drilled and tapped, but correct me if I'm wrong.
So I know that Walker Evans did, and Raceline were the two that, you know, aluminum wheel that had inserts that you could get to from the backside. Now, if you're kind of a spaz, it's really easy when you're putting those bolts in to push the insert out the backside. So you need to be mindful of what you're doing. And just careful, right? Now, I did notice on the new wheels that Jordan got, so if you look at this here, if I just set this down here, if you look at this, right, there's only so many holes.
Right.
On his new wheels, they're double drilled. So if you mess up the first bolt pattern, you just shift it one and put the bolts back in. That's smart.
Awesome. That's
right?
awesome.
So that's thinking ahead.
And his
So
are
plus you're taking some weight
forged,
out.
right? And that's on his forged wheels?
Yeah. Yep.
Nice.
So yeah, that's a real nice feature that I'm sure more and more wheels will start doing, because that's then you're not wasting a $500 wheel. So more questions, Deb?
I think my LMF wheels were like that.
Were they? Yeah, that's a nice brand.
Sean Hudson, when doing an axle swap with Curry axles, do you prefer 5 or 6 lug bolt pattern?
We've always gone with the 5 lug. 5 on 5.5 has been the Jeep standard for eons, ever since the CJ. So that just kind of, because we're Jeep guys, that always just became the standard. I know on Jordan's race car, he's 6 lug, but on all my race cars, they were always 5 on 5.5.
Well, and the nice thing,
Ever.
like when I was buying my axles, I had the same question. You know, should I be jumping a 6 lug? Well, I didn't want to be the odd guy out. I know my axles can take any part that comes out of his axles, and that,
Yep.
you know.
So when we're all out wheeling together, that makes
Sure.
a difference, you know. When somebody's got one spare tire, it's like, okay, you know, get it and put it on.
Yeah.
So
Tammy Fisher, what's the weight difference between forged and regular Beadlock KMC?
it's quite a bit lighter. A forged wheel is typically like 25, maybe 30 pounds, and a standard cast wheel is more in the 45, 50 pound range.
And another good thing about the forged wheel is that they can machine
Thinner.
it thinner,
Yeah.
so you can get,
So
you know,
you
more
can get a
clearance for
bigger break
brakes.
inside.
Yeah,
Yes.
exactly.
Yeah, so this surface is thinner. By the way, the forged wheels won't break, they'll dent. So that's another, you know, if you're kind of a harder core wheeler going fast or like to run low tire pressure, a forged wheel can be repaired. They can literally roll the dent out and you can save the wheel. So.
Dave Rupert, what do you think of balance beads? I did them for my bead locks and really liked them.
Yeah, if you're having a balance problem, that's a great way to go. And I like it better than wheel weights for sure. But we've had really good luck with these Mickey Thompson tires. Did you balance yours? No, I didn't either.
Well,
we just put them on.
Yeah, something super important when mounting a bead lock. A lot of tire manufacturers will actually put either a paint circle or stamp of where I believe the tire is its heaviest, and they want you to line that up with the valve stem. So the material taken out of the wheel is going to compensate for the heavier spot of the tire. And every time I paid attention to that, whether it was, I mean, we've run so many different tires, I've never had a balancing issue. I've never needed beads, additional weights or anything. And it's always run like glass down the freeway.
Yep. Same with me. I've had great luck with that. So, what other questions you got?
Let's see. Bobby Belomi, can you install tires on a regular wheel at home?
Well, I mean, I've seen people do it with the big tire irons and stuff, but you take a chance of damaging the lip on your wheel. I know Harbor Freight has a little tiny like tire machine thing that you can bolt to your floor and try it. These tires, you know, especially if you're talking about like a 40, I mean, these are big, heavy duty tires. These are, car tires are a completely different deal. You know, these are tough. So just keep that in mind. And you know, around here, they only charge $10 to put a tire on at the tire shop, so, or take it off. So for $10, like break your back, I don't know.
Brandon Pittenger wants to know what size tire you recommend going with bead locks besides 40s. But do you recommend bead locks for a smaller size tire?
You know, I ran bead locks back when I had 35s, and I think you did too, right?
Yeah, so I mean, I don't look at it as necessarily a tire size, but as far as what tire pressure you want to run, the type of wheeling. So, you know, if you're a guy that's out in the sand, you could run a lot lower tire pressure and not worry about taking the bead off. But if you're like in the rocks and whatnot, you know, where the tires are pushing against the rocks, you want that bead lock. You know, on a 35, you probably want to run a bead lock if you see yourself going below, what, 15 pounds?
Yeah.
So, and the bigger the tire, the more volume of air there is in that tire holding the bead on the wheel. So you can get away with lower pressure the larger the tire. But yeah, I mean, typically, bead locks are going to be 17s, and anything less, I mean, a 35-inch tire on a 17-inch rim is pretty low profile in our opinion. So yeah, bead locks are what you should be running.
Yeah, and I was going to mention when you're talking about tire pressure, there's also, I don't want to see anything over 25 pounds with a beadlock wheel. You really don't, you got to think about that's what's holding this tire on. Okay, so you start putting 30, 35 pounds, man, those bolts could start shooting off like bullets. And yeah, 25 on a huge tire like this, more than enough. Yeah. More than enough. What other questions you got?
Summer Ann said, can you talk about spacers that go between the wheel and the ring and when you need them?
I'll let Andrew cover this.
Yeah, so the beadlock ring spacer, right? Summer Ann? I think that's what you said.
Oh, I wasn't sure if she was talking about wheel.
Spacers that go between the wheel and the ring.
Okay, so that would be the beadlock ring spacer. So Tony kind of mentioned this a little bit before, but when you're torquing the beadlock ring down to the wheel, we do not want to see a gap between the wheel and the beadlock ring, because rubbing up against a rock, it will squish that rubber, and you can start backing out beadlock ring, the actual hardware of the beadlock ring. So depending on the tire manufacturer, a lot of wheel manufacturers will tell you if you're running a specific tire that they would recommend a beadlock ring spacer. But yeah, the most important thing is if you look inside your wheel, if you've mounted bead locks and they're torqued properly and you can see that gap, it's a good chance that you will actually need that beadlock ring spacer. And I don't think they offer different thicknesses.
No, it's typically like
30
seconds. It's thin.
It's thin? Okay.
Yeah. And by the way, it usually comes in 4 pieces. So it looks like a beadlock ring, but it's in 4 pieces. So you lay it in to make it complete. So it just ships in a smaller box. So don't be surprised when you get them and you're like, what am I supposed to do with these boomerang looking things? So.
Andrew might have already addressed this question, but Alien Fab 4x4, Dan asked, how do you balance your bead locks? Will a shop do it, or do you have to do it?
There are off-road shops that I know, like Redlands. They can mount and balance a 40-inch tire.
Yeah.
I don't know if they can go above that, but they have a special machine that will do that. But again, for all of us, we typically do not balance our 40-inch tires. I didn't balance my 37s because I was paying attention to the way the tire was manufactured. The tire manufacturer puts a dot of red paint or yellow paint of where that tire is its heaviest. I always put that towards the valve stem because there's a hole obviously in the aluminum, so you're losing material, you're losing weight, and that helps counter that weight differential.
Yeah.
So then all my tires have always balanced beautifully without any additional aid whatsoever.
Yeah, and the rubber on your valve stem is not as heavy as the material that was removed. So, and just to back up on that beadlock ring thing, that would go, so your tire would go on, then those spacers, then the actual beadlock ring. So they would be on the outside, last thing before the ring goes on, just to clarify. What else you got?
Summer Ann asked, what causes bolts to snap? Improper torque or something else?
Yeah, improper torque is probably the #1 culprit. They were probably over torqued, would be my guess. Or it was an inferior bolt. We've had that too. We've had bolts that look like grade 8, and you torque them to the proper thing and they just dink, snap right off. It's also part of the reason that I'm talking about grease and anti-seize, right? Because you want to make sure that you're actually getting the true torque. So let's go back to the spacer thing. So when you get, around to say 15 pounds, and you don't do that with this. You're just taking up the slack with this. Then you're going to go to a torque wrench and do each one. Okay. When you get to 15 pounds and you see a gap, then you need the spacer. Okay. So that's what we're talking about. At 15, this should be sucked down, and then you're doing the last 3 or so pounds to really torque it.
And to add to the heads breaking off, if you don't have the proper spacer, the beadlock ring starts to tip. It'll actually flex inwards towards the wheel, and the bead of the tire is forcing that ring to flex. And what that's doing is that's putting adverse strain on one side of the bolt and that would also cause
Yeah.
the head of the bolt to snap off.
So when you get better quality bolts, they don't want to deviate from straight. So as you're flexing them, they're just going to break off because they're not happy. So yeah, good. All good stuff. Yep. What else we got?
David Rupert, has Tony ever experienced a beadlock ring failure?
The only thing, Jamie and I were on a road trip hauling, I don't know, going 80 miles an hour. That was the speed limit, by the way, back then. And we did have a bunch of beadlock bolts pop off and resulting in a flat tire. So, and it was a brand new tire, just wasted it.
Kind of started feeling weird, and we heard the ding, 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 and then
And then,
luckily we
boonk.
pulled over.
Yeah. Yeah. And by the way, when we went to pull our spare off, we noticed that half the bolts had already popped off on that too. So we just started mixing and matching to make a complete set of bolts. And then when we got to our destination, we went and bought all brand new American-made hardware. So, yep, good question. Otherwise, once you do it right, you can see, like on this one, we beat the living daylights out of them and never have a problem.
Do you want to talk about the different rings also?
Yeah, we can. Let's tip this one back up. And, a couple of different things. On the rings, you can see this one has the evacuation holes. So as water or dirt gets in here, it can come right out the hole. And that's nice because it just lets it out. And you got a nice big ring. The bolts are recessed in the ring. By the way, not all rings have recessed bolts, right? Mm-hmm. So different manufacturers make it differently. So we like the recessed bolts for obvious reasons. You can see how bashed up this is. And then again, I upgraded the better hardware. But I can tell you this, when you do this properly, you don't have to worry about things loosening up. I mean, I usually, like you just finished your Jeep, I would check them a couple of times, and if you don't find any loose, they're good. You're not gonna have a problem.
And would you air all the way down to check the bolts?
No, the only thing I would do is if one was missing, I would air down. Okay. If I started to tighten one and it broke off, I'd air down. Like I'd step back from that thing big time. Mm-hmm. That's really what you're after. This only has its full strength when it's fully done. And I can tell you that one that Jamie and I was telling you about, when it started popping them, it was like ping, just shot across the room, and then the next one, ping, and you're going like, oh, we can't let the air out of this thing fast enough, because they were just like. And when it gets like halfway around, I mean, there's like not much holding it anymore. So
it's just getting more and more leverage.
Yes.
When one goes, it's got more leverage on the next one,
Yeah.
and it's just a chain reaction.
Well, and I want you guys to think about, you've seen those bags that they sell to like use as a jack for your car. Well, those just hook to your exhaust, right? Your exhaust produces like 4 pounds,
Yeah.
right? So it can lift up your whole car in 4. This is 25, 30 pounds,
Yeah.
right? That's like a bomb going off.
Yep.
So you really just have to have respect for that. So, yep.
Richard C. Sean Jr., other than a countersink on the rock ring, is there anything that will protect the beads, the heads of the bolt?
Well, having it recessed is really your best thing. And then, I don't know where that bolt went. Did I drop it out? Is it over on that side? But the heads of the bolts, whether it's a 12 point or a grade 8, is flat, right? So, and they're hard. So when you're scraping along rocks or whatever your terrain is, they're tough. You don't have to worry about it. They're tougher than the ring is, that's for sure. It just depends on what kind of, you can see, like in some of these cases, this has gotten wedged and I just powered out of it, and, whatever damage it did. Now, when I change this tire, any of those bolts that look like they've been compromised, if they're wobbling a little bit, I don't reuse that stuff. Like, you throw it away for a $2 bolt, like get rid of it. So, yep.
Scott Zietler would like to know if you like Dynatrac Axles.
Yeah, both. I like both Curry and Dynatrac. They're good, American-made, quality axles. They both have different features, so depending on what you're looking for, where one might better suit your needs or your style, like what you know. So you just have to really make sure you're comparing apples to apples and get the axle and the features that you need. Want to add anything to that?
Yeah, I mean, they're both excellent companies. Obviously, 9 out of 10 times you'll see a Curry axle on one of our Jeeps, and that's probably what prompted the question. But sometimes, I have to tell customers, look, it's not that we think Curry's a better company or Dynatrac's a better company. Both phenomenal companies, like Tony was saying. Sometimes we just have to choose what works best in our suspension system, our steering system. But we've sold plenty of Dynatrac axles along with Curry axles. And again, to Tony's point, the Dynatrac axle may have its benefits in certain types of four-wheeling. Maybe it's overlanding. You got a very, very, very heavy Jeep, and you're towing an off-road trailer. You might want to consider that low pinion Dynatrac in their Dana 80 versus a high pinion 60 or a high pinion 70. Yep. So again, asking, or for me to be able to ask the proper questions of the type of wheeling you're doing when you call in, I'm going to be able to help you choose the better axle for your situation.
Yeah, and I'll add on Dynatrac, they make their own knuckle now that actually turns 10 degrees more. But we like the rolled back cover that allows the axle to stuff up higher on the Curry. So, that more steering is a great feature on long wheelbase, but we're really after that more up travel. So
on the added clearance too.
Yeah.
I mean, I was just out measuring. I just for my own knowledge, I measured the bottom of my rear Curry 70 with that skid plate is the same height as Jeff's 60.
Oh.
So it's they're literally the exactly the same height, and I got that larger ring and pinion. I got that extra skid plate.
That's right.
And I didn't compromise any
ground clearance. That's right. So yeah, that's one of the things that I like about both Dynatrac and Curry is you're buying a high performance, purpose built axle, right? This isn't some housing that they just made work. I mean, these are, really nice high pinion, as well. So good stuff. Yep.
Ken Brand, sorry if you answered this already, but what PSI do you run in your 40-inch Baja Stickies when you drive on the road and when you're wheeling?
Okay, so I run between 20 and 25. I never go over 25. And when I'm wheeling, I really like to start at 6, but 7, 8, right there. Because they come back up about 3 pounds. So, yep. At 6, you can conquer anything.
Timothy McNitt, running a 38-inch Baja Pro XS and run Bead Locks since I rock crawl my 2019 JLUR. Recommendation on rotations since the Pro XS is a directional tire.
Yeah.
Recommendation on rotation.
Yeah, so that's just front to rear. That's all you can do in that case. Yeah, that's a good question and something to think about when you choose a tire, what limitations that's going to have for you. Most radial tires don't care where you put them. So the one thing I do want to add to Ken's question about the tire pressure, the day that I did backdoor 7, 8, 9 times in a row, I had 10 PSI. More questions or?
Yeah. Kent Wolf, LJ with 70-inch axles, running GR Highline fenders. What offset do you recommend?
4.5, 4 3/4.
Yeah.
Probably going to be right.
Yeah.
Right where you want to be.
Yeah, these are 5-inch because they're a forged wheel. So that's what we're talking about. It gives you that extra clearance.
You probably see on Terremoto how where the tie rod, the factory tie rod mount on the knuckle is what is usually going to get into the wheel.
Yeah.
Yeah.
So it gets really close to this spot right here. Alex, can you see that right here? So the factory knuckle would rub right here, and that's right where the tie rod end or the heim would go. And I can tell you, we've actually had it where we bent a wheel and it was shaving the rim down right there, and we caught it. So yeah, just something to think about. But you want to get that back as far as you can for sure. Yep.
Robert Winstell, why do some KMC beadlock wheels have 2 valve stems?
A lot of the time that's done so that you could run one of those monster valves. So yeah, it's kind of up to you whether you want to do that. I don't know how they've been lately. I know a long time ago people complained about them leaking. So I don't know. I mean, a lot of the time once we air down, I'm always waiting for people. So the whole air down thing isn't as big of a deal to me as I even have those ones you just screw on that'll stop by themselves. Or I have the ones that you just screw on, and by the time I make a lap around the vehicle, they're exactly where I want them, and I just unscrew them and I'm done. So, yeah.
Frank Schitano again.
Okay.
I'm told to check torque every 3,000 miles, yet every time I have checked, they've been fine. How often do you check torque?
So if you've done that 3 times, I think you're set. What I would do then is if you came back from a trip and your ring, was all beat up like one of these, then I'd go back and check them. But otherwise, if you're just putting miles on the vehicle, I think you're fine. And again, like anything on my vehicle, once I find something loose, I'm checking that more often, and if it's never loose when I check it, then chances are it's okay. So yeah, just be smart about it. Yep.
Kevin Hudson, what's your take on the new 20-inch bead locks in relation to sidewall profile? Is more sidewall necessarily better?
I believe, so a lot of that is geared around 42-inch tires. I still like the 42 on a 17. I like that extra sidewall. It soaks up. I don't remember if Kevin's had a chance to ride in race car or anything with me, but when we're hauling on one of the rock trails and the tire, has 7 inches of sidewall, you can soak up ball-sized rocks. I know you got to ride with me, and we were just mowing down stuff like it wasn't even there. So, yeah, more sidewall.
Randy Kelly, so 25 PSI on a beadlock wheel is good enough for road driving. I can't always trailer.
Yes. Yeah, by the way, the air pressure, all it's doing is supporting the vehicle and helping to sink off heat. Okay, well, this tire is so big that your vehicle isn't heavy enough to even, worry about sinking off any heat. So, yeah, 25 is more than enough.
George Gonzalez, how do I avoid flat spots on my tires?
When the vehicle's been sitting, you just got to put it on jack stands. Yeah.
Dave Rupert, what do you think of the Apex Design tire stems?
I like those. It just depends on what you're doing and what's available when you go to build up your stuff. So, yep. And you're running like 25, right?
Yeah.
Yeah.
Yep. Yeah, anything north of 25, it starts to run down the center of the tread. So you're
it's just bowing to that.
you're just wearing out your tire unnecessarily.
I don't know what Alfie runs. Maybe he's on, but he's gotten 70,000 miles out of his tires.
I can't believe that.
His Mickey Thompson Baja bosses.
DOTs.
So, and they're flat. They're absolutely flat. Yeah. So whatever tire pressure he's running is good. So
maybe he'll chime in if he's watching. VB Tom, are rings interchangeable between brands? KMC ring on Raceline wheel.
I think they have a different number of holes.
Yeah. So, like for me, when I contacted OMF to get my ring, they specifically had to ask what wheel because that determined even the diameter, the spacing, and obviously the amount of.
So okay, so that's a good point. Andrew went to an independent beadlock maker, and they'll make whatever you want. You want it with your initials in there, and you want it this fat or whatever. Like they're happy to make it solid for you. Like whatever you want.
Yeah, because I wanted that extra thickness. Wanted the extra thickness
so that the bolts were recessed. Yep.
And then it has a little detail between them to get back some of the weight. Not that it matters, but just something different.
Yeah. And Alex, can you zoom in again? I want to show one more detail on the tire. So a lot of the new tires now come with this extra lip right here. And this lip is also to help protect the bead, right on the edge of the wheel. Because a lot of the time the tire will get pinched right there. And now they give you this extra thick rubber right here to help as you're scraping along roots, rocks, whatever. So almost all the new good tires have that. So something else to help keep your beadlock rings and bolts alive. So
yeah, I've seen when a tire manufacturer doesn't have that, seeing like wood chips getting
stuffed in,
you know, from running against roots or whatever the case may be.
Yeah. Yep.
Terry Witt, what terrain is best for a beadlock? I do not have them, and I'm running 35-inch Nitto EXO grapplers, and have never had a problem. We don't have the hardcore rocks to crawl around here.
So, and we've talked about this in one of our previous tech talks. You can go back and look at it. But basically the way it works is right now, this tire at 25 PSI has a small patch of rubber on the ground. If you drop this to 15 PSI, it has twice the contact. If you drop it to 7 PSI, it has twice the contact. So the reason you want to air down is for a bigger contact patch. Now, the reason that a lot of rock crawling guys do that is because they put lower gears in their Jeep, right? So now you have more torque, so you need more traction. I don't know if you follow me on Facebook, but I posted a little video with a guy with Legos. Did you see that? Where he had a Lego like little mobile and he changed the tires and the gears and it showed you how like as you add more traction, you got to add more torque and you got to like, he did it in all the steps. So if you want to learn about, you know, why you need to do all this stuff on your Jeep, that's like a perfect example of why. So yeah, but it's to get more traction. Yep. And by the way, you got to have a bead lock because when you air down, then it's more likely to pop off the bead. So once you go below 10, you're asking for trouble. So, yep. And by the way, the bead lock rings, not only do they come in different shapes and stuff, they're also available in different materials. So, you know, Raceline sells a steel one and an aluminum one. So just depends on the manufacturer. Yep.
Frank Cicchitano again, I'd like to run a non-selectable locker in my 15JK, but the computer will freak out. Is there a solution so I can run like a Yukon Grizzly or Detroit style locker?
You'd have to check out that Taser
Programmer.
Yeah, to see if you can delete that and try that. Yeah, a lot of the time, vehicles, when you go to low range, it shuts a lot of those features off. So yours might do that too. You'd have to check. All right, if we don't have any more beadlock questions, I want to get over to the SwitchPro thing. Are we good? Yep. Okay. So let's sidebar that. This is something that Andrew put in his recent build.
Jeff's got it too.
Jeff's got it too. Jamie's got it too in the Growler. We wanted to tell you guys about it. It's really a solid state system.
Yep.
Slide. Got it. Well, oh, there we go. So it comes, that's what's in this box, a complete setup, a whole wire harness, the whole thing. And what do we got here? Oh, this just shows you how thin the unit is.
Yeah, so
right?
this is literally the brain, okay?
Yeah.
So the harnesses plug in to one of these separate plugs. So this is the SwitchPros Racer Force 12. The one that was on the screen beforehand was their 8-switch, the SP9100. I run both in my vehicle. They have different capabilities, but you know, right here we have the Racer Force 12. We're going to be able to talk about this. There's a few features that this one has that the 8-switch does not have, and we'll make that very, very clear. But again, this is literally the brain.
Yeah.
Okay, like Tony said, solid state, so you don't have to worry about any noise. I run my race radio through this. I don't have to worry about any noise coming from, you know, the compressor or any of the other electronics because there's no relays. You know, this can handle a ton of heat, so it can go underneath the hood. It's not going to corrode because there's nothing.
Yep,
there's
and the
nothing to
whole
corrode.
thing is powered by that one cable to your battery. That's it, which is nice.
Absolutely.
Super nice. Okay.
So a
and
couple,
then-
let me just a couple of the features. So when looking at the 12 switch and the 8 switch, the 12 switch. Let's talk about that. It's got 150 amp capability.
Yeah, that's a lot.
That's powerful. It's got 4 separate outputs that are rated at 35 amps, 1 at 30, and then there's 11 at 15 amps, and then there's 1 at 2 amps. So we'll get into all those. But those 35 amp outputs, they have a real massive gauge wire. It's probably right here.
Probably right in the box, yeah. Oh yeah, look at that.
So all these you would be able to run without any sort of relay. Fans, big, the compressors, stuff like that. It takes a lot of amperage draw, and it needs that power fast. And then these are all for your lights and so forth. Anything that's taking a smaller draw. So really high quality. But let's see here. It's also got Bluetooth, so you're able to program certain things, and we're going to get into that if we can look at some of the slides. But on the Racer Force 12, you can actually program each individual switch to do a number of different things. So I don't know if you had anything to add real quick, Tony, but
no, I mean I just wanted to show them the switch panel, which is, I don't know if they can see how thin it is, like if you mount it in a flat panel.
So again,
it's like
12
half that
switch,
thickness.
the 8 switch. Obviously, if you just took out the bottom of
this
this,
is all the programming
right?
stuff.
So when getting into when you buy a SwitchPros, you're getting so much more than just somewhere to put a bunch of switches. Okay, you're getting program the ability to program everything. So when you have their app, you'll see, and you'll be able to go to settings. You'll be able to see there's a number of different things. So the first screen is your switch configuration. You can change the colors, the names of the switches, passwords, so nobody can screw with you when you're on the trail. Output dimming, so for specific lights, maybe you don't want your dome light to be super bright at night. You can the different readings, whether you want to see it in Fahrenheit or Celsius. Changing the radio name if you're running multiple radios, and so forth. So as within the switch configurations, you can set up stuff for being on, off, or momentary, whether it runs off the battery or ignition. If you want something to be able to flash or strobe, or be able to have a memory function. So I want to talk about kind of the individual.
Excuse me.
These individually, and kind of give you ideas of why I needed it and why you're probably going to need one as well. The preset dimming function. Okay, so I have some dust lights on the back of my Jeep, and at night I don't need to blind the person behind me. They just need to have enough light to know that, hey man,
I'm backing up.
There's a Jeep in front of me in the dust, or backing up, so forth. So I have it set. When I turn it on, it's just one button, comes on at like 10% of the power. If I tap and hold it, it'll actually go to the higher setting. So if I want it to be brighter, I have that ability as well. So and Motec does similar things where each switch
They
has.
do, yeah. I was going to say, this is like the closest thing to Motec that's available. Even my Motec guy, likes this setup.
Yeah.
And I wanted to add that inside that is a Bluetooth transmitter receiver, right? It's built into it. So when you're on this app, you're talking to it via Bluetooth.
Exactly.
There's no extra cables or anything, which is nice.
So the momentary function, that's great because like I would with our quick disconnect, and I need a place to put the horn. So for a momentary switch, you don't want your horn to be on and then I have to turn it off.
Right.
You want to just hit it and have it turn off, just like a starter. You can use your starter on it. I use my horn on it. There's a number of things, even like winch controls, which they don't really recommend that you do, but you could do that because you have the ability to make a switch be momentary versus an on or off option. The battery and ignition. This is a really cool feature. Some things you want to be able to turn on without finding your keys. I know I have one set of my lights. If I'm in camp, I don't need to look for my keys. I can reach in there, turn on a couple of my lights, and without having it be a part of the keyed function, it is straight to the battery, and there's no additional wiring for that. It's all with the programming.
Just set up. Yeah. Yeah.
Kent Wolf wants to know if you're using the SwitchPro for your ignition.
No. Since I retained the factory dash, I still have my key.
Is Jeff or Jamie? I know Mark did.
No, I put in the separate ignition key. So did Jeff.
Okay, but Mark I know has everything
Right.
in his.
It's probably smart to retain a key so you don't get your $100,000 vehicle stolen.
That's why you did it.
That's why I did it, right? So, okay, so what do we have also? So flash function, again, you could, for someone like Jeff or someone like Jamie who's using one of these to power up a lot of different things that maybe they don't have the factory dash like I do. So I still have my turn signals, but you could use this to have turn signals.
Yep.
Just about a hit of a button, left turn signal, right turn signal, and so forth. Strobe, I mean, for the emergency guys or different types of dust lights, you can set up it to be a strobe function. And let me back up a little bit. So you can, again, with the programming, you can have something just come on and off, or you can use the bonus function or secondary function of, if you double tap, it will go into that secondary function, and that might be a flash, that might be a strobe. So that way you're not having to wire things continuously and taking up different different outputs.
Yep.
You can just use one output and just program to do multiple things, depending on if you tap the button once, hold the button down, or double tap the button. There's 3 separate things that each individual switch can do with those 3 functions.
It's really powerful.
Yeah. Low voltage disconnect. I don't know why you wouldn't want it. I have mine on, so and this just happened the other day, I have an air compressor, I got an electric fan, I have the race radio, I have a lot of electronics, and I went to go turn my Jeep on after I stalled it, and it sent off a warning that said, hey, like, something's wrong. What it was is low voltage. Because all that stuff is running and I went to go start the Jeep, the voltage dropped too low, and it told me, hey, like, the voltage is too low. So I was able to turn that stuff off real quick, fire up the Jeep, and keep moving. So that was nice. So if you're like sitting for a long time, I know, out racing, if we're talking on the radios or spotting or whatever, you want something to tell you, hey, you've been running your battery too long.
Yeah.
It's time to start your vehicle.
Yeah, I mean, maybe you're just parked and have the stereo on.
Sure.
And you forget,
Yeah.
So.
Memory function. So for me driving a stick, the memory function comes into play. So if I stall my engine, I don't want to have to turn my lockers back on. I don't want to have to turn, if it's night, I don't have to turn my lights back on. I don't have to do all this stuff. So you can set a memory function to remember where that switch previously was when the engine turned off. So,
and by the way, this happens all the time on the trail, right? Everybody stops, you shut off your engine, you get out, you help them throw a rock, whatever, you get back in. Well, you want all that stuff to come back on.
Exactly.
Yeah.
So that's, little things like that just make it so pleasurable to own something like this, that it's thinking for you, it's working for you, and so forth.
Yeah.
This is actually really cool. So the next one is your master switch function. So the Racer Force 12, on top of the master switch function, it has more outputs than it has switches. So you're wondering, okay, well, how do I do that if I don't have enough buttons? This has 17 outputs. So what you can do, if you need more switches, okay, than what you have, you might want to start thinking about how you can stack different outputs to work on the same button.
Yes.
So I think one of the best examples would be headlights.
Yeah.
You don't want to take up a bunch of different switches just for your headlights. So there is the ability to have a switch set up as a on, off. So the first time you hit it, you can have it programmed to turn on your running lights. And the next time you hit it, it'll turn on your actual headlights. So you just took 2 outputs, but it put it under one switch.
Yep. Yeah, I have on my bumper, I have the lights and then the light bar, and if you hit it twice, then it turns on the different lights.
Awesome. Yeah. And then as far as the master function, that is something that you can control up to 4 outputs with just one button. So, for me, I with the light bar setup or the individual lights that I have, that is a ton of amperage. I could not physically put them all onto one switch or onto one output. I put them on 2 separate outputs, but then I can just program them into one switch
using that.
Or if I had, if I wanted to, I could put even more and just have it go to one switch, so it's not cluttering up the actual unit of the SwitchPros, the button part of it. So, and then your output. This was confusing to me at first because when I started with the 8 switch, each button was a part of an output. So switch 1 was output 1, switch 2 was output 2. On the SwitchPros, on the Racer Force 12, they have nothing to do with each other. I can take output 8 and 12 and put it on switch 1. I can put, output 3 and 4 on switch 2.
And that's important because after you get your Jeep done, you might go, well, I really wanted that function over here, right? And then you can just move it.
Yeah, and for me,
without unwiring stuff.
Yeah, and for me, it's like, okay, I've accidentally bumped a certain button, and you do not want certain things to get bumped. So you want to make sure that buttons that you're regularly pushing, whether it's lockers or lights or whatever the case may be, you want those away from. Say if you have like fuel or ignition or stuff like that, you don't want to accidentally turn the Jeep off while you're doing 60 miles an hour. Or accidentally hit a locker when you're going around a turn at 60 miles an hour. So so it's really it's incredibly powerful. I haven't been able to utilize the full capability of it. I'm still working with it, but man, it's as close to what racers are using. I guess that's why they call it Racer Force.
Yeah, they're trying to market to that. Yeah.
It truly is of the highest caliber.
Yep.
We got another question,
Sure.
Andrew. Jeff Lone, is that on-off feature only available on the Racer 12? Can that be used with the Vision X dual shocker to work the light off one switch?
I think that's what Jeff's doing.
Yeah. So the with the 8 switch, it has. Let's see here. You can have what are called trigger wires. Both of them have trigger wires, and that will allow you to have other functions, other outside input go into your SwitchPros. So some people want like their high beams or their fog lights to trigger, let's say, the amber on the shocker or the white light from their high beams. You could have a factory wire trigger those without necessarily utilizing an output on there. So, but yeah, the Racer Force 12 having those extra outputs, you can then sit there and program the shocker, which has 2 functions.
2 functions.
And then like their chase light, that has 3 or 4 functions.
Yeah.
You can put that all into one switch.
Crystal Fulton has a question asking how you like the Heist LED rock light bar brand.
Never heard of it. I'm
Never
sorry.
heard of it. Yeah. Yeah.
Heist? I guess.
Yeah.
Okay. Yeah.
What else you got? More questions?
So you're at an hour.
Oh, we are already.
Already?
Man. Any more specific on the SwitchPros?
Not that I can see. A couple people saying they wish they knew about this before they got their solution.
Yeah. It's one of those things, and I think you can mount this way or this way, right?
Yes. So they have different legends.
Yeah.
That are for vertical or for horizontal.
Yeah, and it comes with a bunch in the box as well.
I wonder if
Do we have more?
Let's see what we have. What am I doing? Skip.
Well, there's some. You
Okay.
got it. Yeah.
So Yeah, so just real quick, the way the programming looks, it's really simple. When you go to settings and you clicked on one of those first items, your ignition function, all you got to do is you just got to tap on one and it'll say ignition or battery or momentary. It's gonna be either your on off or momentary, and you can go through and just keep going through next, and it's really self-explanatory.
Oh, here's some mounting solutions. Yeah.
So yeah, these are the mounting solutions. So this is so clean. This is the 8 switch, so it's a little bit smaller, probably 20% smaller than this. This is right underneath the hood of a JL. You can see the edge of the battery. This is that fuzzy insulator they put on there. But it's so clean and simple how everything's ran with this unit. This is their A-pillar grab handle mount, and then there's the vertical option as well. Just another example of someone that put it up in their sunglass holder. I've seen people do it on their sun visors. Really,
it's so thin.
Yeah. So.
Oh, and this is our next topic, which is going to have to wait for Thursday. So.
Yeah. So.
More. Oh, and this does, when you turn on the headlights, this dims, right?
Yeah, it dims.
Yeah,
so
that's nice.
That is a nice feature. I know my the SSV MRB3, it does not dim when I turn on the headlights. So it's little things like that you take for granted.
Yes.
That you're not being blinded by stuff that's on the interior.
Yeah.
So, and you can change the colors. You can do whatever you want. Green, blue.
Yeah, it's got
pink.
the whole RGB color scheme. Yeah.
And we had our regular viewers asking if we have updated status on the 42-inch Mickey Thompson tires or the JL build.
Thursday.
Yeah. On Thursday. So the JL build is well underway. I was over there just prior to coming in here, and that's looking good. So, and Jamie, Alex, and I shot a video of it yesterday evening. I don't know where Jamie is in terms of putting that together and editing that.
Well, I'm not working on it right now.
Okay.
It'll be done by Thursday.
But okay, maybe he'll have it done tomorrow. If he's got it done tomorrow, we can post that. And it's a great walk around of the frame and kind of talking about why we did it that way and the features. So, but I think on Thursday we'll be able to give you an update on that, on the growler. We got so much stuff planned for you. We didn't even get to the whole battery thing today because it kind of goes in line with the SwitchPros. So we're gonna have to cover that on another day as well.
Kurt Starkey has one last SwitchPros question. He wants to turn off his fans, and when it's off, want it to light up, but I can't figure that out.
Say it one more time, Deb.
I own a SwitchPros and want to turn off my fans, and when it's off, want it to light up. I can't figure that out.
So
he wants it to light up when they're off. Is that?
He might need, unfortunately, to run a relay to do that, so that it's doing the exact opposite.
Is that something he can call down there and somebody might be able to answer?
I mean, I know we're gonna hopefully down the road have the owners of SwitchPros come up here and have a physical display and be able to show a lot of this stuff. But that's a really good question. But to the fans. That fan option, sometimes for other people that need that signal to turn a fan on and off, the Racer 412 actually has a ground signal and a ground output. So that's also really, really important because a lot of these newer vehicles, they run off of grounds. They don't run off of, is this getting power? Is this getting power? Is this getting a ground?
Yeah.
So that might be a part of what you're asking, is utilizing more of the ground side of things rather than the power side of things.
Yep. Yeah, the other thing I wanted to add, we might have talked about it earlier, but I wanted to mention again, is there's no fuses. So this has an auto check feature, right? So if something amps out, right, it'll go ahead and try and reset it and restart it.
Yeah, the light starts flashing really fast that it's grounding out.
This little light, there's a light under each switch. Yeah.
Exactly. So that's a really nice feature, and you can set the amperage that you want that to shut off at as well.
Yeah. So that's similar to like what we do on the Motec. Yeah.
Crystal has one last question. How do you guys feel about the iDrive to take out the throttle lag?
I've actually, the Gladiator I drove today has that, and it's interesting. It's where I see it really applicable is when you're in low range and you want to make the pedal like have a little bit more travel so that when you breathe on it, the thing doesn't like. So yeah, I'm a fan of that stuff. It's called, by the way, several different people have bought and are private labeling the exact same thing. I've seen it called like 4 different names. So yeah, they all do the same thing though. So yeah.
Cool.
Yeah. All right. Well, I hope you guys enjoyed that. We ran out of time quick. 2 popular topics, I guess. So please join us on Thursday. Thanks again for joining us today, and we will see you then.